Hello and welcome to re-enthused. Today we are talking about the BBC Micro, which is it's got a huge legacy in many different ways, not all of them always obvious. In the late 1970s, the British Broadcasting Corporation embarked on a project called the BBC Computer Literacy Project. This was designed to mix TV programs, school initiatives, and a common hardware platform to push computing knowledge. It was partly made in response to a competing channel, ITV, mini-series, which basically dealt with a similar thing and kind of predicted the rise of the computer age. So initially the BBC only went to one supplier to deliver the hardware side of it, but there were complaints by Chris Curry and Clive Sinclair, the BBC being a publicly funded organisation. They do technically have to put things out to tender, and so they kind of pushed that. I think probably Clive Sinclair hoping he'd kind of win and having the more established company. Chris Curry obviously ex-Sinclair and just started really the Acorn. So Acorn computers were busy making the success to their first machine, which was the Atom, well, their first proper in-the-box machine, which was going to be called the Proton, but it only actually got to the design stage at this point. But with the tender literally being weeks away, they got Steve Ferber and Sophie Wilson to effectively put together this prototype in effectively record time. Luckily for Acorn and Chris Curry, Ferber and Wilson are, they're pretty much the best of the best in the industry at that point. And so they did manage to get a machine cobbled together. It was not great. It had some issues in what it was doing, but for a demo and to show off to the BBC that it was the platform they were looking for, and let's be honest here, it was, compared to what was also being offered, which really was the ZX81, and I think a few of the Tangerine projects were being offered. The Proton, as it was even in this bare form, was still far and away closer to what the BBC were envisioning anyway. So, but anyway, yeah. History was made, and the BBC awarded the contract to Acorn, and so the Proton became the BBC Micro. Now, the BBC Micro was not a cheap machine to make, so it was released in 1981, and it was £235 for the Model A and £335 for the Model B. This was substantially more expensive than anything else out there. I mean, there was a reason why it was pricey. It was incredibly over-engineered. It was genuinely a solid bit of engineering. It had fast RAM, which was so rare at the time that Hitachi literally took the RAM they needed to get ready for this demo for the BBC. They hand-delivered it. That's how rare this memory was anywhere, including especially the UK. And it had to have this special fast RAM because they were running their MOS technology 6502, which of course is based on, at 2 megahertz, which was much faster than similar products from Apple and Commodore were running theirs at. And a lot of the machines of this age had issues with contention. So the ability for the memory to have data put in and put out of it compared to the speed of the CPU just slowed everything down. And that's the reason why they spec this super fast memory, to reduce that contention and to stop the machine from slowing down so much. And it worked. It was the BBC Micro is an incredibly powerful machine for its age. There are also other things such as if we'll look later at the ports, and we'll open it up as well and look inside. But there was tons of expandability. There were so many ports on this thing, and inside there are loads of ROM slots to expand the machine even more. So that incredible over-engineering really added to the price. But it was over-engineering for a reason. It was going into schools to be used to teach them everything about computers. I mean, literally, it was going to teach them everything. And it was going to be using labs to do science experiments and things like that. So that over-engineering was for a reason, but it did mean it was quite expensive. So obviously, there's a bad side to it being that expensive. So obviously, what Acorn hoped was going to happen was children were going to use this in the school, and then they would talk to their parents, and their parents would know they're using the machine in the school, so their parents would then go out and buy those machines for their home. And so Acorn would take the money that BBC were investing in them, which wasn't as I don't know the exact figures, but I'm fairly certain it wasn't a huge amount, not enough to run a company. But they would also get the extra sales from the BBC Micro as well to keep them going. It didn't work out that way. Now, the BBC Micro wasn't a failure by any means. Obviously, it was in a lot of schools in the UK, not globally, because Sinclair did manage to convince a few schools to take the cheaper ZX81 option. It was a lot cheaper as well, especially because Sir Clive was not happy with with how Acorn had done this and won this contract. And so he also massively slashed the price for education as well. So a few schools took that on, and some schools literally just didn't buy them. They couldn't afford them. So it wasn't global, but it was pretty damn close to global. So, I mean, they had a huge number of people. I mean, for a lot of people, my generation, the BBC Micro would have been the first machine they ever used, the first computer they ever played on. It was certainly one of the first computers I played on. So it was an incredibly important machine, and it was in that way successful. They also had very limited success in America. They did sell to a few schools over there, but they had to make a ton of changes to make it work with NTSC, including making it so it's 200 lines, obviously, because PAL has got more lines than NTSC, which made a lot of software incompatible and wasn't easy to fix in software either. So that stopped it from being any huge success. They sold some to Germany. It was a re-engineered model in Germany, which sold moderate success. But there are also a lot of the Commonwealth countries, such as India, had their own literacy programs, and they basically took rebadged versions of the BBC Micro over there as well. So again, quite a few sales that way. So whilst they may not have had a huge amount of success in the home market, they did have a lot of machines out in the world as a whole. Now, obviously, this led on to the Electron, which was the cut price version of this, the one they hoped to compete with the Commodore and Sinclair. I've already dealt with that. I will include the video in somewhere, depending on what you're running on. It will be somewhere. But the BBC was never really going to be it, because it was just there was too much machine for it to be priced to be in the home. Is the unfortunate case of affairs. But but it was still successful in what it was planned to do. It did help. They did complete the BBC Literacy program. A lot of children did learn their computing from the BBC Micro and that program. So it achieved what it set out to achieve. It just wasn't a huge financial success because it didn't get a lot of that home market. Yeah, well. It wasn't the last machines. There were several revised models, including the Master, which obviously was, kind of the all-singing, all-dancing one, a bit of compatibility issues, but it was a very much sleeker looking machine as well, I think, and obviously 128K memory as well. And obviously the whole thing was eventually replaced by the Archimedes line, something we'll touch on. I have also looked at the Archimedes. I'll probably, if I remember, include that as well. Remembering two things to include, though, that might be too much. But I'll try to remember, and it'll be somewhere around here. But we'll get onto the Archimedes a little bit as well, because this is part of the BBC Micro's legacy, is that. But anyway, let's take a little look at the machine, and then we'll open her up, and then we'll try some games out. So, yep, here we are, and yeah, the BBC Micro is a very big machine. Now, this is a Model B. There was also the Model A. The Model A had 16K memory, and this B has 32K memory. Obviously less than some of the competing machines, but then it was kind of bolstered by having a lot of software in ROM and stuff like that. So it could compete, but yeah, it could have done with the extra memory. Obviously, later 128K model kind of resolved that. So yeah, we have quite a nice keyboard on these machines. We see here it's got the British Broadcasting Corporation microcomputer system. So this was certainly a machine that was probably earmarked for schools, although some of the home ones also had that, but occasionally they will just have the Acorn logo. There's a speaker underneath here, because the sound comes from within, which is interesting when you're trying to record stuff. Now, the one thing that is kind of strange about this as a school one is that there's a little perforated slot here, which is sometimes affectionately known as the ashtray. And basically this allowed you to have a ROM holder here, so you could put in ROMs like on the fly without having to open the machine up. And that was generally broken off in schools for that very reason. But mine isn't. This is my label, obviously. That's to remind me the command I need to load up the internal software, because I always forget it. Right, so if we just have a look at the back, which, yeah, this is going to be Interesting. Get rid of a loose screw. It's not from the machine. Right, so let's take it then. So here's the power supply. This is the big kind of Achilles heel with the BBC Micro. These power supplies have a kind of a reefer cap in there, which is used for filtering, and that does tend to die over a few years, and you'll suddenly get a huge cloud of smoke, which looks very dramatic, but isn't really doing very much. And you can even run the machine if you want to without that on there, but it's easy enough to get a replacement. So that's really the big thing that goes wrong on these machines, though. You see the EcoNet slot there, which is filled in. It's another potential reason why it wasn't used in the school. The EcoNet was kind of a local network system and was used a lot in schools. Although not all schools used it, so it's not definite. Here you can see there's kind of these two slots, because you can have things coming out from within, like cables and stuff. That's an analog port, which is used for several analog devices, mostly joysticks nowadays. In fact, I have this here, which is by Monster Joysticks. No Samwell parts in there, though, which converts the analog port to two digital ports. Very, very handy indeed. And we have a cassette port. You could load games from cassette. RS423 for serial. RGB. Get a nice, fairly decent signal from Sky out of it. There's also a composite video adapter there, which is used more in lab things. And also the UHF out for normal British televisions. Obviously for the worst style of signal. Right, we need to get the rest of the ports. We need to turn it over, and here we are. This could be interesting to be able to get a good view. I think that's, if I hold it just there, that should do it. So we have an external power thing here, so you can power devices from within there. An external disk drive slot, obviously only external. I guess technically you could put an internal one in there. Printer. This is a user port, which is used for several different things. For me, it's using this rather nifty little SD device, which is a thing I was talking about that's got some extra software inside, which we will take a look at in a minute. That's a special 1 megahertz bus, which is used for certain devices. And this, though, this is probably the most interesting of them. So this is the tube port. Now, what this is designed to do is allow you to run a different processor in parallel with the 6502. Now, the first thing this was used for was to have a Z80 add-on, and that allowed this machine to basically be CPM compatible. But the more interesting thing, and the thing that really puts the BBC Micro kind of with its place in history, if the school thing isn't enough, is that this is also the port that was used to first trial the ARM chips, as used in the Archimedes and as basically used nowadays in almost everything. Especially most mobile phones. So that's kind of, its place in history is that really those chips were prototyped here on this BBC Micro as a second processor. So, it's a nice bit of history for this machine. Right, what we'll do is then, we'll just whip the top off, so to speak, and we'll take a little look inside. It's easy enough to do, just a couple of screws. It's designed to kind of come apart, because all the ROMs are inside that you can replace. But I will take it apart and then I'll show you. There's nothing interesting to show you in the taking apart bit. Right, so with the removal of 4 chunky screws, the top comes off, although we do have to also remove 2 flathead screws with nuts, so we can move the keyboard. Generally wouldn't have to do that though. So there's the power supply, which as I said is basically the Achilles heel of this whole machine. There's our speaker where the incredibly loud noise, if you don't mod it, comes through. And if we just remove the rather nice keyboard from here, down here we can see our EEPROMs. So this has got basically where you could put in some extra programs. Mine are all full up. You can see this one here is the control software for the SD solution I've got. We've even got an EEPROM called Dump Out, which was in there, and that one which, let's see if we can get some light on it. I can't read it. Graphics extras. No idea what that is. I'm sure I'll find out at some point. If I remember, I'll put a description in there. But yeah, so you can extend that with several things. Like for putting this in there, I removed View, which was kind of a spreadsheet style program. Or at least an office thing. So there are all sorts of things that could be replaced in there, including scientific things. It's a rather nice machine. There's a lot of wires going everywhere. You can see the various power lines going everywhere and stuff like that. And obviously the keyboard is on this this flat flex here. But it's quite a neat little design, really. Lots and lots of chips, which again added to the price of the whole thing. A lot of this could also be upgraded as well with different things. But yeah, it's a nice machine. It really is. But anyway, let's put this back together and then we'll go and play some games. And here we are at the front screen of the BBC Micro. So see, 32K memory. The Turbo MC is because we have that EEPROM plugged in to control our software. So we can now type in the little command that I've got written on my machine, although proceed with an asterisk because that's how we tell it we're running stuff from memory. There are other ways of loading this program, but this is the one I know best. There we go, we get a list. So we have several pages of games, and as you can probably see, this looks, if you're of a certain age, a little bit like teletext, and that's because this is running in the basically in the same mode as teletext, effectively. I mean, not quite the same, but it's it's kind of interesting to see. Obviously, the BBC Micro was a big part of teletext, having its special modes that dealt with it and such like. So it's another piece of its history. Right, now there will be issues recording some of these programs. This runs at a fairly weird frequency, which sometimes throws the capture stuff around. But we will try. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go for the ease, because there is absolutely one game you have to play on a BBC Micro, because it is effectively the home of the game. Well, let's say Acorn platforms are effectively the home of the game. And there we go, Elite. Yes, as it was meant to be played. So I can never remember how to do anything in Elite. So bear with me. Oh, there we go. That was the inboard speaker. I can't do much about that. But yeah, so here's Elite. And yeah, I mean, I'm a specky boy, so a few years ago I would have argued that this wasn't the best version of it, but it is. It is the best version of Elite. Or the best 8-bit version, let's say, rather than yeah. But no, it's fun. Let's get some people attacking us. There we go. There's some ships coming. And we showed this on our Electron playthrough, and it was quite a lot slower and flickery on the Electron, and of course the extra memory and such like means that the Beta Micro just does throw it all around a little bit nicer, and you can kind of see really what they were trying to do. It's a fantastic game. All right, well, let's go on to another game. So this is Frack, which is considered indeed to be one of the best games on the BBC Micro, or at least one of the best loved, certainly. So let's get those keys, the slightly weird BBC Micro keys, as always. Right, there we go. Oops, I just fell off. The capture device is having a small issue with this one, but you can see it's quite a nice looking game. It's quite pretty. It moves solidly. There is obviously some flickering, but it's quite colourful. It's quite fast. Oh, I really am not making that jump. But it's about as good as any machine of its time probably could have done, really. Let's give it another go. Oh, well, I got the diamond at least. Anyway, let's do one more game. Right, of course, it's the eponymous Chucky Egg. How can we possibly play a machine that's got Chucky Egg on it and not actually play Chucky Egg? It's impossible. This is a particular favourite of mine. I will have to talk quite loud over the sound of the BBC Micro. Yeah, my BBC Micro is not modified. A lot of people have put a volume control in place, which is easy enough. I've never got round to doing it. I probably will. I streamed this during our computing museum live stream a couple of weeks back, and this was this was one of the worst things about it was the was the noise and not being able to change the volume. Anyway, that's the BBC Micro. It's got its place in history for several reasons. Its educational value, the fact that so many people grew up with this machine because of its the BBC Micro project, but also because of its place in the ARM history. Okay. Also, its place in ARM's history as well, and obviously we know what became of that. So yeah, it's a fantastic machine. The prices are getting up there now, which is a real shame. I personally have wanted a BBC Micro for quite a while. I've not been able to get one cheap enough. I even managed to buy an A3000 cheaper than any of the Masters, so that says a lot. But I'm happy enough with the BBC B. I'm glad I got it. It's a real blast from the past for me because I had these in school. Now they're pretty robust machines. They will occasionally need some recapping. There's not a huge amount you have to do. Sometimes the EPROMs need reseating because they literally just kind of sweat their way out over time. But it really is that power supply and the reefer cap, which will probably almost certainly go, followed by huge chunks of smoke pouring out, which will be incredibly frightening when you first see it. Indeed, I've got a video online where I nearly dropped my phone because it suddenly started happening, and I knew it was probably going to happen as well. So yeah, but it's repairable. Thank you. But it's repairable, and like I say, they're pretty robust machines other than that. And there's lots of storage solutions. The SSD solution I've got there cost me like 20 quid. So yeah, it's affordable once you get the machine. There's a lot of stuff you can get. You can get tapes obviously as well, and you can get something like the Casduino running on it too if you want to play on from tape for some reason. But yeah, great machine. I do really recommend getting one if you can. Right. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like. If you really enjoyed the video, please hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy the video or you have something else to say, then please leave it in the comments below. Also, as I keep saying, don't forget we are streaming on Twitch as well. Generally, it'll be either Wednesday, Friday, Saturday or Sunday. And if you keep track on our Twitter, on the re-enthused Twitter and my personal Twitter, John Blanchard, Jon Blanchard, then we'll mention when we're doing it. So yes, that's twitch.tv/re-enthused. Right. See you next time.